Hello everyone, and welcome to Sustainable Innovation for Interiors. I'm Silvia from D4Design, interior design and content creation studio with a focus on biophilic design and sustainability in the interior design industry. In this series, we are meeting designers that are developing new solutions for sustainable interiors. And today we are meeting Nina Sarsotto Cassina, ceramic designer. So let's welcome Nina.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Here. Okay, so I would say to start right away with maybe a little introduction about you as a designer and your work.
Yes, so I'm a potter and a ceramist. I am based in Milano right now, and my work focuses on wild clays and rocks that I forge myself and I transform into pottery. My work very much relates to the environment, and what I'm focused on is like the identity of a landscape through the information and the stories of the materials. So I look at a place at like a landscape level, but also at a molecular level, and so the chemistry and the physical information that are into clays or rocks.
Yeah, very interesting. We'll go more in detail into it in a second. Next is a general question that I always like to ask, because sustainability is such a wide topic. It covers an array of aspects. So I always like to ask, what does the word sustainability mean to you in particular?
Yes, so I think to me personally, it relates to social justice, because I think the interest of the people living on the land and the planet itself are bound together and truly depends on each other.
Yeah.
And also because I think that the current environmental crisis is not happening by chance, but it's part of a colonial and capitalist project that has like clear objectives.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think to me personally it means that, and the maybe on like on a more practical, I mean, this is also very practical, but like in my work specifically, it means to have care and pay attention. So like I try to have a strong relationship with the materials and the landscape and the process that I am working with. And I think to have that slowness of process and care allows you to like think better of all the relationships and the systems in which the systems of which you're part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I so agree. We are going too fast in so many ways, right, in our world.
Yeah, it's also why I called my studio an urgent. I mean, it was both a personal choice. I mean, like a personal change of life compared to the sort of work and the sort of pace that I was doing before.
Okay.
But also it had a political meaning of refusing this frenziness of producing and consuming and living in general.
Yeah, so true, so true. Okay, so now I think we can go into your collection of vases, going into your project, vases that are handcrafted and made with locally sourced clays, rocks, and minerals. So maybe you can walk us through the process, the project a little bit more in detail.
Yes. So they're handcrafted. I make everything with pretty traditional methods of pottery. So the majority of my vases are made at the wheel. Whenever I find a wild clay that it's not plastic enough to be worked at the wheel, I find other methods, but always by hand. Mm-hmm. The other quite important thing for me is that I like to work with really small quantities and small samples of every time different clays. Yeah. So even when I work in a specific place, I try to have like a few different types of clays and see what happens with each one. So my process is mostly about experimentation, and I'm not trying to achieve a certain look or a certain performance with the clays that I collect, but it's actually the other way around. So like my process and my final objects are informed by the initial
Material.
materials.
Okay, wow.
Yes. Mm.
Yeah, that's an
And
interesting approach.
yeah. And then, yeah, the other thing that is quite important to me is the choice of the shape, which is
Okay.
always round, and always a simple. I mean, it's the round shape is quite a traditional form in pottery.
Yeah.
Across history and geography has been made. It's been made across history and geography. And I chose it initially, I remember, because I don't come from artistic or design background.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, if I ground myself in a traditional form that has been repeated so many times, I have some sort of binaries. And it means like I am not cheating all of the steps. Like I'm doing something traditional and then I'm taking these wild clays and the shape becomes the canvas for the material. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, then it makes sense because it's such a simple shape in a way that it really allows the material to shine through. And then when you compare 10 different vases that all have the same shape, you really can appreciate the differences in the material more. So I also
Yeah,
think it's
exactly. And then, I mean, the idea is that I tend always to these like perfect sphere, but then
yeah,
each clay
is
speaks
yeah, exactly.
and each clay has some sort of like physical and chemical properties.
Yeah,
And at the end, not every sphere is like the other ones.
yeah.
And I quite like that. So there's like attention towards this perfect sphere, but then on the other side, the clay, I have to relinquish control to the clay itself.
Yeah. And speaking of clays, is any clay fine, or do you look, because you said before that according to the type of clay you change the method, of working with it. But is any type of clay fine for your purpose, or do you look for specific
I
features
mean,
of the material?
for my purpose, most of all, yes, because I don't make functional pottery, and I am not trying to achieve like a specific object or a specific look. Um, there are a lot of difficulties that you can encounter. So you might encounter a clay that is made of particles that aren't fine enough. So maybe it's not plastic enough and I cannot throw it at the wheel. Or you may encounter some clays that have, for example, too much organic matter, which makes it sticky and really difficult to handle, or which may have some sort of mineral impurities that then create some problems during firing, like calcium carbonate, for example, in Italy. Now, locally, I've encountered calcium carbonate.
Okay.
It's basically in so many clays around this area, Milano, the Appennini, and like the area of Langhe with which I worked some clays. Traditionally, it's a problem,
Okay.
but there are ways in your process with which you can make it work.
Okay, that's great. Also having ways to work around the features of the material. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And again, on your choice of material, since you work with locally found materials only, does it ever feel like a limitation, or is it more of a source of inspiration?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the second. I mean, the limitation is obvious in the time and the effort that you need to, forage and then process and then test it. But for me, that's also the fun part of it.
Because you do it all yourself, right? You go out, source for the clay, and then study it, and then make a vase with it.
Yes. So
Wow.
usually I start from like a place that I know. I studied some geological information about it, and then like I forage
Okay.
and then process. Sometimes as little as possible. Sometimes I have to process the clay a little bit more.
Okay.
But I think that yes, like this familiarity that you have with the material that you forage yourself and you process yourself definitely makes you use them more wisely, and also allows you to remember exactly like where where an object comes from. And it's a different form of thinking and living than like fast produced, fast paced objects and living. So yes, I don't feel it as a limitation.
Okay. And how does the process work, really? You said that you start studying, the geological information of the place, but in practice, I mean, where do you find, because I guess every place is somehow different from each other, so you're not necessarily familiar with it from the get-go. So how do you get familiar with the geological information of the place?
Yeah, so in some places, geological maps are incredibly precise. But then it's also always true that, like, to know a place through a map or to know it through experience is completely different. There are a few things that you can do. So, I mean, knowing a place, it's a good thing. Like, for example, in my case, whenever I worked with places that I've been before consistently, like maybe places in my childhood, you have some sort of memories of, for example, I don't know, places that were slippery, or places that were always more wet, or some sort of plants that grow on it. And these are all information that then can help you identify a clay. But yeah, basically I start from maps, and then when I'm at the place, you can look at plants. So there are certain type of plants that happen to like clayish soils.
Okay.
You can look at water and basically natural borders in the land, where the layers underneath of the earth might be exposed. Okay. So there's a few things that you can do, but clay is quite a common material, and it's pretty much everywhere.
That's amazing. Yeah, how many things you can see when you can discover when you see a landscape. You can watch it from very different levels. And I never thought, about looking at plants to see, to imagine what kind of earth, actually, what kind of soil is behind it. That's amazing. So fascinating. Thanks. Okay. So this is a theme that came up when I reached out to you to organize this interview, because when I invited you to this series, you mentioned that you are a bit cautious in labeling your work as sustainable, because there are some aspects of the process that are not properly sustainable. And as I said to you before starting, I think this is a very honest behavior. And also, as we said before, sustainability is such a huge topic, and to put it in practice, it's a journey, and recognizing what's not good enough is the first quintessential step to get better. So in your case in particular, what are the steps in ceramic production that are not that sustainable? And maybe we can discuss a little bit about how they could be made more sustainable in the future.
You mean ceramic production in general, or specific to my practice?
There's a difference, then focus on yours. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, yes, exactly as you said. I don't think of sustainability as an arrival point, and I am aware that I haven't thought about it enough to then be able to frame my practice as sustainable. And also because sometimes it seems like there's a given, like, I work with wild clays, so I'm sustainable. Like, I had a few potters talking to me saying, I work with commercial clays, I don't think it's sustainable. But the opposite, it's not necessarily true, I think. Then I'm also completely aware that in any case, to be working with wild clays or to be working with commercial clays, the negative impact of small ceramic studios or small creative practices is never going to be comparable to, like, the raw commercial industry behind it. And also, like, the thing about wild clay that I think it's important in sustainability is that there still are worldwide, like, a huge number of potters that work with wild clays locally, fire, air, in sustainable ways, or through a sort of time that is sustainable. Because to fire clay, you always need some sort of energy or some sort of combustible. So it's not automatically sustainable, but of course it depends on the pace that you use. So like my wild clay practice is not sustainable by definition. And I think maybe one of the problematic points that sometimes I think about, symbolically, I am profiting from land. And there's still a lot of stuff that I have to think about in this sense. Also the sort of scientific, sometimes geological language that I like to use can seem a bit too neutral and a bit too detached from like history and time and reality. Well, actually, like geology was one of the main like mode of power that allowed accumulation and dispossession of natural resources and land. So I am inserting myself in a discipline like geology that can be very problematic, and I am profiting from land. And I think it's an ongoing discourse of thinking exactly what that means.
Yeah. So, and then, as you said, then also the firing, the production method is problematic because of the combustion, because you'd use like fossil fuels to
yeah.
to
well,
fuel, right?
Yes. So, for example, in my case, I use an electric kiln. Okay. So it's powered through electricity, and that can be cleaner or dirtier. Exactly. I think we should go back to those ways of producing and making that, for example, a lot of indigenous communities or a lot of communities outside urban, fast-paced communities have been adopting for thousands of years. Like traditional pottery studios are incredibly good at like recycling and reusing. And it's not something that, for example, like wild clay urban studios have invented. Not the idea of utilizing wild clays, and also not the idea of being sustainable. The firing, yes, it can be done in different ways. It always will need some sort of combustible or energy. I think there are ways of using a combustible or using energy, with more care and without this frenziness of making a lot and making all the time.
Yeah, I think, as I said before, I really think it's a very honest starting point, because since sustainability is such a complex topic, asking all of these questions and thinking about all of these things in your practice can only get you better and can only get you to a real sustainability, because now sometimes this word is maybe a little bit abused, when instead, as you actually said, there are so many underlying meanings that needs to be analyzed to really be and truly be sustainable with respect to the land you use and you kind of exploit, and for what concerns the methods of firing, etc. Then it all comes down to what source of where you produce that electricity, how you produce it, which is actually a problem in your practice, but in our world in general, because where the energy comes from is a bigger problem. And then there's a spectrum of, you can be totally not sustainable, totally sustainable, and everywhere in between. So it's as we said before, it's a journey, and but it's important to ask these questions. So agree. So next question would be again concerning your kind of method and where you the materials you rely on, because relying so much on local materials is also kind of a way to underline the importance of localism in sustainability. So maybe can you expand on this topic a little bit?
Yeah, so it's something that it's incredibly important in my practice. Then I'm also aware that localism for my practice has meant very far away materials as well, because before doing this, I had quite a geographically hyperactive life. So I forage materials like in the past 2 years, mainly in the UK and Italy, but I worked with rocks from a lot of other places. And now I am quite enjoying being really truly being in a place. And clay has been incredibly grounding in that sense. And I think that knowing a place through its materials builds like a different form of knowledge and a different form of even emotional knowledge in a sense.
Also.
Yeah. So for me, like it had been many, many years that I wasn't living in Italy anymore. And when I came back last autumn, I started to work with a few clays of a mountain nearby my hometown. And it was incredible because it really made me rediscover like a sort of sense of place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so true.
Yeah.
Really the connection. This is what, it's the other side of my work. It's really what nature can do, right? If you really try to connect with the environment around you, it can do so much on a psychological and mental level too. So that's great that you could experience it with your work.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a different way of seeing. It's a different way of knowing, and I think it's really important. And exactly on this, I am working on a project which is called Translocal Pottery, of which the topic is exactly like this idea of localism in crafts and what sorts of relationship that can be built around this idea. And yeah, this project has been incredibly exciting. It's with other 5 potters globally, but we all work locally. And then, through the sharing of our local materials and our process, what can happen, basically.
Wow, that's amazing. I can't wait to see it. When is it due?
Yes, so there's going to be a final exhibition in 2022. So it's part of a research project of Luis Vega at the University of Aalto. And then there are other 5 potters, and we're working on it right now. And then there's going to be an exhibition next year.
Okay, all right. Yeah, 2022 is next year. Oh my God, time is flying.
Yes.
All right. I'm lost. Okay. Next question would be about this wonderful period that we are living. So I always, since I'm a big believer that challenges are also sources of opportunity in many ways, I like to ask lately if any, if COVID has changed and how it has changed your plans, and maybe if it has created new opportunities, something that you were not necessarily planning to do or to experience with, and that came as a consequence of lockdown and COVID restrictions.
I started to make clay in 2019, so it's also quite recent. And weirdly, I think of my clay work almost solely as relating to the time of COVID, basically. I started in 2019, but I was just learning and starting. And then basically in the same exact time that COVID started, I was selected for an exhibition. And then slowly, like things started to happen more, and I made it much more relevant in my life. And I decided that I wanted to keep making also as a way of living and working. I think COVID definitely, in general, in my life, made me slow down.
Yeah.
So which was both something like forced on us, but also for me maybe felt also as a possibility. Where I didn't really have it's not that I didn't have the possibility of slowing down, but I didn't think of it as a possibility.
Yeah, maybe you felt a little bit of pressure around you of not wanting to slow down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with COVID, you were forced to, and I think I have focused a lot on clay the past year and a half now.
Okay, oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I always like to ask this question because it's really an opportunity to, as you said, to slow down and to maybe, I've been talking to other designers that found really opportunities to do something else. And I really believe that as serious and terrible as this situation is, there are a lot of opportunities on a personal level. And it's important to, as much as possible, keep a positive state of mind to try and seize those opportunities. Yeah, and it's great to hear.
I think it highlighted so many aspects that were wrong in our fast-paced, capitalist, unequal way of living, and really made them surface so that it's not possible anymore to not see them. Then I am a bit more dubious if we're going to be able to not go back to it.
Yeah. But hopefully, at least seeing it for many people was not so obvious. So that's one step in the right direction. Then, as you say, it's not, I also think it's not automatic that we will be moving in the right direction right away, but that's one step. So let's be positive. Okay, so maybe on this kind of on the same line, this is again a question that I always like to ask, because in our world, our world is in urgent need of sustainable development in every field. So in your opinion, what would speed up or facilitate change in the design industry? What could help?
I think to hold people accountable, to hold the elite accountable, to hold certain people accountable, because I am fully convinced that the impact of individual makers and the impact of small making studios, or the impact of the 99% against the 1%, it's absolutely minimal. And sometimes I am a little bit against these idea of like individual responsibilities in climate change or environmental sustainability or even social justice. Like, it's a responsibility of holding the elite accountable, but the responsibility is not as shared as I think they
portray.
Like to.
It's true that everyone can do something, but there are people that can do a lot more. So if they are held accountable, that could help definitely a lot.
Yeah, but also because the consequences of environmental disaster are not the same for everybody. Exactly, it's pretty clear that there are certain communities that are way more impacted. Absolutely. And even that is, it's not randomly happening.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So true. Yeah. Okay, so we have hit the end of our time. So we will, I would like to close with, if you have something that you can anticipate on further projects, something that you have on the pipeline and you're working on, if you can anticipate something, give us a sneak peek.
So the first thing is that I'm changing studio tomorrow. So
oh, really? Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. So that's a big change. But it's still going to be in Milano, just in a different area in Mecenate. And then in terms of my work, I think right now I am thinking a little bit more in terms of like archival research. Okay. So build an archive of information and materials, which is going to be a personal archive, not like a systemic one, of places that I care about and places that have a sort of relevance for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, again, connecting to what we said before, to the level of connection that an environment can give to a person. That's fantastic. So thank you so much for your time. It's been such an interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to you. Yes, it was very interesting. Thanks.
Thanks everyone for following along. I will see you in the next episode of Sustainable Innovation for Interiors. And until then, take care. Goodbye. Bye, Nina. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.